The vulnerability mapping tool. This pilot project created by Jens, Dave, Ava, Josef, and myself. The need for the vulnerability mapping tool, the VMT, was perhaps the first inklings of that was noticed in 2005 after the race of stem rust TK-TTF was reported in Turkey. But no one connected the dots that major cultivars in East Africa would be highly vulnerable to this race. Subsequently, in 2013, Ethiopia had a devastating stem rust epidemic on the widely grown cultivar Digaloo. In 2012, a new yellow rust race, PSTS11, was detected in Afghanistan. But there was no recognition that several popular cultivars in East Africa were highly susceptible to this new race. An incursion of this race into Ethiopia in 2016 resulted in severe disease outbreaks, followed by rapid spread into other East African countries. From these events, it was seen that a tool that could model the host pathogen interaction for both stem and yellow rust could make a large difference to how the BGRI community could manage and deal with this situation. So on the next slide, you'll see that the goal of this pilot project would be to create a radar system for risk of stem and yellow rust damage to wheat in any geographic location. Such a tool would allow us to model how much wheat would be at risk if a known pathogen were to enter a new geographic region. This would permit better preparedness, potentially variety replacement, and fungicide planning. Our initial plan is to create a pilot project for this tool for Ethiopia and Kenya for stem and yellow rust. Next slide. The approach to the model is based on the disease triangle. If we know what wheat variety is grown where, and based on the R genes and other information, we know how each variety will react to each pathogen. We know the virulence of the rust race that are present in each country, including the neighboring countries. We also know about the environment and where and under what conditions rust will either likely spread freely or be restrained and fail to thrive. Given this set of information, we can build a model that can predict the host pathogen interaction. So next slide. This slide shows the popular wheat varieties and their distribution and the intensity of the planting in Ethiopia. Much of this data was gotten from DNA fingerprinting that was done quite recently. Based on an expert system, an estimated scale factor is developed based on the known R genes, molecular markers, gene postulation, and the pedigree helps to tell you about the field reaction. Next slide. This slide describes, based on monitoring, what races have been prevalent and what times both here and in neighboring countries For example, from 2010 to 2013, TTKSK was very dominant, whereas in 2019, TKKTF is now more common. This shows that in any given year, a different race may be more of a threat than in a previous year. In the slide to the right, or in the image to the right, we see a visual of areas where rust is more likely to occur because of the weather, soil, and other conditions. Only because of all the monitoring and surveillance efforts are we able to collect this information and do this. Next slide. Here's how the model does the calculation. It looks at a series of algorithms that involve the following factors and others. It involves the variety distribution, the geographic location, the infection rate for that variety, for that race of stem rust or yellow rust, environmental factors for that area. Okay, and then using those factors involved in the algorithms, the result is the risk of infection by that race on that particular variety of wheat at that location. Okay, the method can also calculate based on either a single or combination of varieties present at a given location. Next slide. This is a collaboration between the GRRC, Cornell, and CIMMYT under the DGGW project. Okay. Next slide. This image on the left shows areas that are vulnerable for stem rust. And on the right shows where high priority areas are for yellow rust and where different areas of risks are. Perhaps looking at this, we may be able to think about high potential production area losses based on these kinds of models and where we might focus efforts. On the next slide, currently this is a pilot project, but after refinements, it will be embedded in a number of key sites. It will go on to the GRRC and Rust Tracker sites at least, but it can be embedded anywhere. With respect to next steps, we'd like to review historical data and tune the algorithms with the model. We'd like to include more countries in the model. We see that there are several challenges. Challenges include getting reliable wheat variety distributions for countries like Kenya and other countries. There's shifting varietal distributions and getting reliable spatial disaggregated data at regular time intervals. It would be great if we could get that every 3 years. Lastly, infection rate estimates. We have limited information on our genes. Many are unknown. And there's a lack of field testing or adult plant screenings in key locations like Georgia. But that's some of the challenges. Lastly, I'd like to thank all of our collaborators and of course the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and the FCDO. Thank you very much. Thank you. Bye-bye.